It's April 2nd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with President Yoon's national address on medical reform. Yoon reiterated the urgent need for hiking medical school admissions places by 2,000, while noting the government is open to talks if doctors bring a unified proposal on medical reform. At least 7 officers, including a top commander, have been killed in a suspected Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate building in Syria's capital, Damascus. Tehran said it's considering retaliatory action. North Korea this morning launched a medium-range ballistic missile into the East Sea. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff is in the process of analyzing Tuesday's launch. President Yoon rolled up his sleeves to address the public and the absent trainee doctors on why a medical school admissions hike is necessary. But he also said talks will be available if doctors bring a unified and rational solution to the table. Oh Soo-young starts us off.
The Yoon administration has hinted there may be room to negotiate with doctors on strike if they can present a solid case for lowering the number of extra students the government wants to add to medical schools each year. This came on Monday as the president made a live televised address to the Korean public to stress the urgent need for medical reform, namely by expanding the quota of students admitted to medical schools by 2,000 annually. The policy has been opposed by some 12,000 junior doctors who've staged a walkout since late February, compromising medical services nationwide, particularly in already underserved areas like emergency and critical care, as well as regions outside Seoul. Doctors have argued that more medical students would lower the quality of education and that improving doctors' compensation would incentivize working in more strenuous healthcare fields. Yoon said there have been sufficient consultations with medical practitioners and experts to decide 2,000 as the minimum number of additional students needed to strengthen the medical delivery system in order to meet the growing demand for healthcare in the rapidly aging country.
지금 당장 5,000명의 의사가 더 필요합니다. 결국 2035년까지 최소한 15,000명의 의사를 확충해야 합니다. 증원에 반대하는 이유가 장래 수입 감소를 걱정하는 것이라면 결코 그렇지 않습니다. 현재 우리나라 의사들의 평균 소득은 OECD 국가들 가운데 1위입니다. 20년 후에 의사가 2만 명이 더 늘어서 수입이 줄어들 것이라는 걱정은 기우에 불과합니다.
Even with 2,000 more enrolled in medical schools, Yoon said it would take about a decade for them to expand the pool of qualified doctors, and at least 20 years for the number of doctors to increase by 20,000. Expressing his regret that the collective action by doctors threatens the lives and well-being of citizens, he noted that some 8,800 now face cancellation of their license to practice medicine.
제가 대통령으로서 앞으로 수많은 국민의 생명을 구하고 또 수많은 국민의 건강을 지켜낼 여러분을 제재하거나 처벌하고 싶겠습니까? 여러분은 대한민국의 매우 중요한 미래 자산입니다. 국민이 여러분에게 거는 기대와 여러분의 공적 책무를 잊지 말아 주시기 바랍니다. 환자가 기다리고 있는 의료 현장으로 조속히 복귀해 주십시오.
Still, Yoon appeared to offer some room for negotiation, saying he is open to discussing appropriate and reasonable alternatives to adding 2,000 extra students, in the form of a unified evidence-based case by doctors, instead of arbitrary and discordant criticism of the government. His policy chief of staff added later in a broadcast interview that it's not about keeping the quota increase at 2,000, but presenting a rational solution that could help steer policy in a better direction.
The President this month will launch a special committee under his supervision to promote dialogue between policymakers and the medical community in order to coordinate and initiate a comprehensive reform. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
But doctors weren't too satisfied with President Yoon's national address. They insisted the speech didn't offer any solutions to resolve the medical service disruption. Our Shin Ha-young has the details.
Senior doctors have expressed disappointment with President Yoon's medical reform speech, saying they could not find any differences from previous announcements by the government. During a briefing on Monday, the Korean Medical Association stated that doctors were hoping that President Yoon was going to come up with some solutions. Countering the president's statement that there had been discussions with the medical community regarding the medical school enrollment quota expansion, the KMA emphasized that doctors' opinions have not been considered at all. As of Monday, medical school professors at general hospitals have begun reducing outpatient services and surgeries. Because of the en masse walkout by trainee doctors 7 weeks ago, the medical professors keeping hospitals running are suffering from fatigue. Professors from 20 schools at 40 nationwide stated last Saturday that 1 day off will be mandatory after working continuously for 24 hours. They added that outpatient services and surgeries for severe and emergency patients will be scheduled based on this. The KMA, the biggest doctors group in the country, also announced doctors who run private clinics will shorten their working hours to 40 hours per week. On Monday, the health ministry urged the medical community to withdraw their collective actions and reiterated its measures to keep the health system functioning.
Government will closely examine the operating of emergency rooms and strengthen the emergency medical system. The government will provide available personnel to the fullest and continuously monitor the professors' reduced working hours and resignations.
While there haven't been significant changes on the first day since outpatient services and surgeries were reduced, eyes are now on whether they'll be reduced even further. 신하영, Arirang News.
Positive news for South Korea's exports in the month of March. Is this something we can get used to in the second quarter as well? We turn to Professor Ho Jun-young for more. Welcome back.
Hello.
Good morning. South Korea's
morning.
exports went up for the sixth consecutive month in March, despite fewer working days. Now, how did that work and what does this mean?
In March, South Korean export increased by 3.1% compared to last year, making a continuous growth for 6 months. Especially semiconductor export reached about $12 billion, the highest level in 21 months. Export growth rate for the 4 major IT sectors, including semiconductors, display, wireless communication, and computers all showed positive trends simultaneously. So last year, the GDP growth of Korea was like 1.4%, which is kind of low, but many export, including the world institution like IMF, OECD, expect that this year's Korean growth is higher than 2%. So this like export-driven growth in Korea is like meaning that we are on the light path of economic recovery from last year.
Right, so all thanks to a strong chip shipment, which grew for the 5 consecutive months as well. Now, will we see another such strong performance in the second quarter as well? What do you think?
I think so. The export, by definition, is the the amount and amount times price. That's the export. So, semiconductor industry in these days, like export going up by both sides, like price going up at the same time, amount of shipment to the other country also go up. And like while increasing demand for AI and semiconductor chips in the global economy, I think the growth momentum is expected to continue until the second quarter and until the end of this year.
Right, Professor Ho, in the meantime, what happened to automobile exports? I mean, what's the reason behind the poor performance of car shipments?
I think compared to last year was too good, but there are several factors that like this year's like performance is less than last year. So the first thing is like world demand growth in the car market. So last year was expected to be like 9.2% growth in the world car market, but this year people expected about like less than 2% growth. So maybe like world car market is not as like good as in last year. So that's one thing. And another thing is like, economic electronic vehicles selling in these days is not as good as last year. So this is another thing. And the last thing I can pick out is the decrease in the Labor Day in March compared to last year March. So those three factors account for the recent kind of slowdown in the car market exports.
And what's interesting about the latest figure is that there were more exports to the U.S. than to China again last month. Now, what might this be the cause for the alarm?
I think since the establishment of diplomatic relationship between South Korea and China, which was 1992, China has been Korea's largest export destinations. However, recently, last year, December marked the first time in over 20 years that export to the United States exceeded to those to China. So following February, March saw U.S. exports surpassing those to China, indicating a rapidly changing trade landscape in the middle of the global supply chain restructuring caused by intense U.S.-China strategic competition. I think this tendency might be lasting for a while.
Professor Ho, before you leave us, what countermeasures then should there be in response?
Yeah, I'd like to highlight that China remains an important export market, but there are ongoing changes. So South Korea faces structural challenges due to increasing self-sufficiency in intermediate goods production in China and weakening comparative in the Chinese import market. So it is important to nurture export items through continuous development of high-tech, high-value intermediate goods to secure technological differential from Chinese intermediary market.
All right, Professor Ho, thank you so much for your time this morning and your insights as well. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Iran says Israel bombed its embassy in Syria, killing a top commander. While Israel has yet not to claim the responsibility for the bombing, Tehran says it preserved the right to respond to the consulate attack. Our Lee Seung-ja has more.
In what may further escalate the already tense situation in the Middle East, Iran says Israel is responsible for bombing its embassy in Syria. According to local media, the Iranian embassy in Damascus was bombed with Israeli warplanes suspected of being responsible. Tehran claimed that the attack killed 7 military advisors, including 3 senior commanders. However, Israel has not claimed of responsibility for the attack, with an Israeli military spokesman only saying that it does not comment on reports in the foreign media. The Syrian foreign minister and an interior minister were at the scene in the aftermath of the attack, both condemning what they called a terrorist attack that killed innocent people. In response to the consulate bombing, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani said Tehran preserves the right to respond to the Damascus consulate attack. He added that Iran will decide later how to respond and punish the aggressor. Iran's top diplomat Hossein Amir Abdollahian earlier pointed to Israel as being the mastermind behind the attack and said the attack violated all international agreements. Since October 7th last year, when armed conflict between Israel and Hamas began, Israel has targeted military installations belonging to Iran and those of its proxies in Syria. Monday's attack would mark the first Israel attack on an embassy compound since the conflict began. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea appears to have launched a medium-range ballistic missile into the East Sea this morning. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff detected the ballistic missile at around 6:53 a.m., launched toward the East Sea from the Pyongyang area. Tuesday's launch comes around 2 weeks after the regime conducted firing drills involving super-large multiple rocket launchers designed to target South Korea's capital under the supervision of leader Kim Jong-un. Seoul's Joint Chief of Staff is analyzing the details of today's launch and said it's closely cooperating with the U.S. and Japan to maintain a full readiness stance. And Washington assessed that Pyongyang is continuing to supply military support to Moscow amid the prolonged war in Ukraine. According to Pentagon Deputy Spokesperson Sabrina Singh, when asked if North Korea is still supplying Russia with weapons during a press briefing on Monday, the partnership between the two sides continues to flourish. She added that while Washington has released declassified information on North Korea-Russia military cooperation before, it will not reveal details of recent shipments. Singh also said that Russia continues to cooperate with countries like Iran, emphasizing that the U.S. will continue to stand with Ukraine. The 2024 edition report by the U.S. Trade Representative has criticized South Korean bills that mandate foreign content providers to pay network usage fees. Our Park Go-nu tells us more.
The U.S. Trade Representative on its 2024 National Trade Estimate Report on foreign trade barriers released on Friday has continued raising issues on pending South Korean bills, calling on foreign online content providers to pay network usage fees. Calling the bills anti-competitive, the report said the National Assembly has been proposing the legislative measures since 2021. The report also said the network usage fees U.S. content providers would have to pay will be profiting the Korean competitors, especially some Korean internet service providers, including SK Broadband, KT, and LG U+, which are also content providers. The bills would also strengthen their grip on the market. Some U.S. companies opposed the measures, even going for litigation. Twitch, Amazon's streaming platform, suspended its service in Korea at the end of February. In the report, USTR also raised issue with Korea's restrictions on agricultural biotechnology, delaying the approval of new tech products. But the length of this year's report dealing with Korea was 2 pages shorter than of last year's and 18% shorter overall. In the foreword, there was a sentence that didn't appear last year, that each trading partner has a sovereign right to adopt measures in furtherance of legitimate public purposes. U.S. Chamber of Commerce Senior Vice President and Head of International John Murphy said in a statement that there's the risk of giving the green light to other foreign governments to raise barriers against U.S. exports or otherwise discriminate against U.S. companies. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn up to stories from around the world. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government approved a bill on Monday to temporarily close foreign broadcasters in Israel that are considered to be a threat to national security. The move directly targets Qatari TV station Al Jazeera's local office in Israel. Following Netanyahu's pledge to take immediate action to close Al Jazeera, Israel's House of Representatives voted and approved the law that would allow the Prime Minister and the Security Cabinet to shut down the station for a renewable period of 45 days. The measure, which is set to stay in force until major military operations in Gaza are completed, can target any foreign broadcasters in Israel. After Monday's vote, Israel's Communications Minister Shlomo Karhi said that Al Jazeera has been encouraging armed struggle against Israel, acting as a propaganda arm of Hamas. A White House spokesperson called Israel's move to shut down Al Jazeera concerning, while the Committee to Protect Journalists, a watchdog for media freedom, said Israel's move was posing a significant threat to international media. Moving over to Poland, where 5 people were killed on Monday by falling trees as southern parts of the country were hit by strong wind with speeds of up to 155 kilometers per hour recorded at the peak of the region's Tatra Mountains. According to authorities in the resort town of Zakopane, a 23-year-old woman and a 9-year-old boy died after being struck by falling trees. In the spa town of Rabka-Zdrój, north of Zakopane, 2 adult females and a 6-year-old child were crushed to death by a tree. Local media reported that the region's firefighters intervened 140 times on Monday morning to help residents with destroyed roofs and to clear trees blocking roads. The strong winds followed 3 days of unusually warm weather, with a record high of 26.4 degrees Celsius recorded on March 30th. Moving over to Germany, where a partial legalization of cannabis came into effect on Monday. Some 200 people gathered in front of Cologne Cathedral and over 1,000 at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate to celebrate the landmark legislation. The new law allows for the cultivation of up to 3 cannabis plants for private consumption, while ownership of up to 25 grams of cannabis in public spaces and up to 50 grams in private domicile storage is allowed. Cannabis clubs have also been approved, where large-scale non-commercial cannabis production is allowed for institutions of up to 500 adult members. While cannabis clubs can grow the plant in large-scale operations, only club members can consume their product. As of Monday, Germany became the 9th country in the world to legalize the recreational use of the drug. In the U.S. Capitol, a human-sized Easter bunny hopped onto the podium at the White House press briefing on Monday and greeted journalists as part of an April Fool's joke. The bunny took part in the annual Easter egg roll on the South Lawn earlier the same day, where U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcomed some 40,000 visitors for the 144th Easter egg roll. The White House's long annual tradition of Easter egg roll began in 1878 by then-President Rutherford B. Hayes.
Good morning. It was one delightful spring day yesterday. Seoul's cherry blossom officially made an appearance yesterday as well. It will be warmer today in the capital, topping out at 23 degrees Celsius this afternoon, but topping out the day at just 7 degrees. So be mindful of temperature swings and dress accordingly. And it's not going to be as sunny as yesterday. Those on Jeju will receive rain from lunch, spreading to southern regions as the afternoon goes on. It will rain heavily on Jeju and Jeollanam-do, while Jeollabuk-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces could see 10 to 40 millimeters of rainfall. Meanwhile, central regions will receive rain tomorrow. Seoul and Chuncheon top out at 23 degrees this afternoon. Daejeon and Daegu will see a high of 24 degrees Celsius. So it's going to feel more like mid-May in many parts of the country. And the air quality will be normal to good nationwide all day today. Rain should let up tomorrow afternoon, while temperatures stay warmer than normal through the weekend. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.